I go.
Amen.
I go.
Amen.
I go.
Amen.
The community and village has been assembled. Elders of the community, the audience, do I have your permission to speak? That would be anyone that's over 65 years of age. Do I have your permission to speak? That always gets a good laugh. But a lot of problems that we have is because too many of us that are in that 60 to 80 group and older have not assumed their responsibility. Only in America and in the West do we have this fear of growing old and deaf, a fear that our ancestors did not have. It's a pleasure and honor being here with you this afternoon, representing the National Rites of Passage Institute. Who am I? Who am I? I'm a product of Cleveland Public Schools, born in 1945 at Mary B. Talbert Hospital. At that time in the central area of Cleveland, that was the only hospital that black people could be born. It's no longer there. Former Salvation Army Hospital where unwed mothers delivered, but others in the community, were also able to be born there, such as myself and my brothers and others. Being brought up in the 55th and Woodland area in Kellogg Metropolitan Housing Projects and moving to the Union Miles area of Cleveland, then to the Lee Harvard area of Cleveland, one thing that sustained me in those communities that I developed in had to do with the importance in being buttressed by rituals, cushioned by the community, and sustained by the arts. Sustained by the arts. What has resulted in me being on this journey that I'm on now? What is that a result of? I think of two experiences that I've had. One of the experiences was in the early 80s. Two individuals that I got involved with doing gang intervention, a gang called the Dynamite Devils. And the two individuals died at a very young age, 14 and 15 years of age. Moan, Raymond Martin, Hawkman, Joseph Hawkins, dying at a very early age, but coming into their lives too late. Then, looking at the continuum, doing consulting. At the time, it was Society Bank, asked to come in because a certain segment of the population, being African-American males, were basically having a very difficult time surviving and being successful in that culture. Graduating from the best of schools and having, honors, work, the first to work in the trust department and commercial banking department, did everything that they were supposed to do. But again, having a hard time coming to terms with fitting in. What's an example of, not being able to fit in? going to the cafeteria and not wanting to bring attention to themselves and not sitting with other blacks, but sitting with whites because they felt if they sat with other blacks, attention would be brought to themselves. Being very uncomfortable, with their identity. Wanting to be raceless and not adhere or be supportive of the culture that they entered this institution with. So again, we have two extremes, two individual young men came into their lives too late. They were part of a gang. And then others that have been successful graduate. There wasn't an achievement gap problem with them. There wasn't a proficiency test problem with them. But again, what they both had in common was identity, not being grounded in their heritage. And some of the things we talked about today, the importance of ancestors. Ancestors, we're here today because of others that have come before us. Too many of us think I am because I am, as opposed to I am because, we are. Thinking of my father, and I was, thinking about the obituary of my father and my uncle who passed away in 1998, a week apart of prostate cancer. And then it said, legacy of service and trust. Legacy of service and trust. The rituals that they brought from the old country being Alabama and Georgia, that helped sustain myself and my brothers and my, uncles and aunts. All those things being very important that resulted in me being who I am. What are rituals? And what are rituals? Basically, there are two types of rituals. There are seasonal rituals that reflect the spring that we're in now, that reflect summer, that reflect fall, that reflect winter. But there are also the seasons of our life that reflect rites of passage. The spring of life, the summer of life, the autumn of life. A lot of times I like to say that I'm in the Indian summer of my life, putting off that winter, which is right around the corner. But again, if I'm blessed, I may have 15, 20 more years left. But again, rituals being very important, rites of passage being very important. And rites of passage is nothing more than dealing in the transitions of life that we go through. Our ancestors had a good handle and understanding of those transitions that we go through. Again, we in the West, this resistance to growing old, this fear of dying. That's one of the reasons why there's a new transition that didn't exist among our ancestors hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and that's midlife crisis. But the only reason there's midlife crisis is because of this fear. Too many of us suffer from the Peter Pan syndrome, that we want to stay young forever. We don't want to grow old. But it's very important that we assume the responsibilities of eldership in the whole area of generativity, which I am in now. What is the relationship between the ritual of rites of passage and community regeneration? We have to understand that energy in all systems become expended. It becomes expended. And I'm going to answer that question with another question. Are we born men and women? Yes or no? No, we're not born men and women. We're born males and females. We're not born adults. We're not really born human. We have to be socialized and developed into manhood and womanhood, to be sanctioned to be part of the community. That can't be left up to just happenstance or the popular culture. That's why our cultures are so very important. What happens when you do not have myths or rites of passage? What happens is when you look at the newspaper, the headlines of the newspaper, relative to the gangs that we have, like the Dynamite Devils that ended up being the demise to some extent of Moan and Hawkman. Again, not having a sense of identity, purpose, and direction. Also, when we look at the graffiti, and graffiti is nothing more than urban hieroglyphics. It's really young people saying, see me, and displaying, their sense of who they are. Whenever there's a void among young people, they will fill that void. And a lot of times that void is filled through being involved in gangs or individual and disruptive group behavior. What is the rites of passage process? It's really three sequences to any type of rites of passage. The first one is separating and bonding, what we call preliminal. The second stage is liminal or transition, acquiring new language, new information, dying as a child, being reborn as a adolescent, dying as an adolescent, being reborn, as an adult. And then the third, which is the most difficult one, is just reintegration, going back into the community and being sanctioned as a man or woman, or at least on your journey towards manhood, and womanhood. But again, looking at these two experiences I had as a consultant in corporate America and doing gang intervention, establishing an organization then called Simba, which is Kiswahili for lion, but the young lion, Simba Wachanga. And that was in 81, providing young people with a sense of identity, purpose, and direction. 1986 with the Malakas, which were for the young ladies, and then the Simba in Malaka network. And then expanding that because of requests from all around the state, developing programs using the process in Cincinnati and Youngstown and Dayton and Lima, Ohio, creating the Ohio Rites of Passage Network. Then in 1989, I had the opportunity to be awarded a W.K. Kellogg Fellowship, which enabled me the opportunity to be able to travel around the world and to look at, among indigenous people, how they socialize their children into adulthood and how they socialize their children into manhood and womanhood. Spending time on the North Island of New Zealand, among the Maori people, spending time throughout the continent of Africa, north, east, west, and south, a lot of time in West Africa, spending time in South America and Brazil, in the Amazon, looking at the way that individuals are socialized, among different cultures and people into manhood and womanhood, and the importance, of that. As a result of that 3-year experience, as a result of the field research that I did, I wrote a book called Coming of Age that was published in 1992. Coming of Age, focusing specifically on African American male, rites of passage. Then in 1993, I created the National Rites of Passage Institute. And the purpose of the Institute was to create a critical mass and community of adults that would serve as servant leaders, and to use rites of passage as a strategy process for child development, youth development, and community building. Rites of passage programming that we've done in the past during the 90s, the Cleveland Municipal School District, the East Cleveland Public Schools, the YWCAs, helping develop rites of passage programs, the Youngstown Public School System, the Lorain Public School System, the Overland Public School System. So the 90s, rites of passage was going real strong around the country, and especially in Ohio. Then came Leave No Child Behind. And then came the Cleveland Public Schools being taken over by the city of Cleveland and the mayor. Instead of it being less political, it ended up becoming more political. Now, the fruits of the National Rites of Passage Institute, at this time, I would like to share some of the fruits and the impact that we've had through programming that we have been involved in Baltimore, Maryland, through an organization called the Baltimore Youth Resiliency Institute. Another program that we have that's in Copley, Ohio, the My Brother, My Sister program, a program that we started in 1994. We got involved with at Grafton Correctional Institution. A lot of the individuals or children that we worked with at East End over the years, a significant number of them had males, be their grandfathers or their fathers or their uncles, that were incarcerated. So to get them ready to come back to the community and to assume responsibilities as a parent and as leaders, we've been very successful at Grafton Correctional Institution, which you'll see a little bit of the fruit of that labor. Also, the East End Neighborhood House Drummers, who you have just heard, who have been with us. Lolo here has been a member of the drumming group for a number of years, as well as Sanu and Daratimi have been very much involved in going through the drumming part of Rites of Passage. I want to just leave you with my vision for the National Rites of Passage Institute. NROPI, in collaboration with communities, other organizations, institutions, practitioners, and scholars, will have successfully evaluated the understanding and value of rites of passage to the point that it is an integrative part of child, youth, and community building at all levels of system. The National Rites of Passage Institute will function as a hub, out of Cleveland, Ohio, Resource Center, and a clearinghouse providing information, training, technical assistance, research and development, and intentional conversations on rites of passage for child, youth, and community development. One of the major goals of the National Rites of Passage Institute is that it will be a voice in all conversations on child, youth, and community building. You all reflect the various cultures that you represent, the heritage that you represent, the rituals that some of you may have embraced, but at least you have the option that they're there. Among some of us that came in this country as unwilling immigrants, we're just trying to restore, not to be romantic and just use ritual as an end within itself, but as a means to become more whole and more human. Thank you.